Hey everyone, in this video we want to talk to you about how to enhance female libido and sex drive. This is coming from a question that we got on Facebook, and the person's basically interested in knowing how they can increase their desire to have sex. And so that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yes.
So
Woman's sex drive is very complex because it's not just, I'm sure most women listening to this knows, it's not just like eating oysters and
other
right
things.
and lighting candles. Like there's so much mental influence upon like our desire too.
Yeah. And this applies to both men and women. Really is in general, sex drive is complex. It's a concert of hormones, of your like mental and life output or outlook. Uh, I'm sure many of you can relate. If you're like, for example, really depressed or down in the dumps about something, you're probably not going to be as interested in having sex as if you are feeling really good about something. Um, and then there's also just very individual factors that are like, do you find the person physically attractive? And that's going to vary from person to person because, I mean, even though there's beauty standards that exist, there's no like one size fits all approach.
Yeah, and I'll go over some of the mental aspects after we hit on the supplements.
Yeah, and so I guess the first place, so we're going to touch on the psychology of it, or Brianna is, and but before we jump into that, we just want to briefly touch on, some things that you could literally do immediately, since the psychological work will take time to like get into the habit of. And so those things that you can do immediately are going to be supplements, for example. And there have been a handful of supplements that look at how they affect sex drive and libido. Unfortunately, for many of them, the focus has been on men, and especially improving sexual function and like
It's pretty straightforward with men as far as like there has to be desire, like physical
Yeah.
desire and blood flow. Like
Yes,
that's that's
physical
they're
desire
pretty
and blood
simple.
flow.
Women are way more complex. That's why it hasn't been studied
Yeah.
extensively in women.
Yeah, and so the first one and probably the best investigated is going to be Maca. So Maca at doses of just 2 to 3 grams per day of just like a cheap old any Maca powder has been shown to increase libido in women over, it's like a steady increase over 8 weeks as you take it consistently, and then the effect seems to plateau. So after about 2 months of being consistent with it, you could expect your benefits to be maxed out. And at that point, you're maintaining them.
Yeah, I find a big boost with maca myself.
Yeah.
Almost instant. I would do the gelatinized though. I know that they probably used whatever in the study, but a lot of people have like gut distress if they don't use gelatinized, and that will wreck your sex drive too. So
Okay.
I would
that's
I
fine.
would focus on that one
Yeah.
when you're looking for one.
Another one would be yohimbine, or preferably yohimbine hydrochloride, which takes that active yohimbine molecule and isolates it. Yohimbine is the bark, and that's going to come with a lot of different bioactives in it that are going to increase the side effects of using it, such as if you're prone to anxiety, it can increase anxiety, it can increase heart rate, it can increase blood pressure. And the reason it does all that is because it basically binds to alpha adrenergic receptors and prevents their signal from transmitting. And these are the receptors in your body that can be thought of as like brakes on a car, where they tell things to, slow down. Let's stop mobilizing fat tissue. Let's lower your heart rate. Let's reduce blood flow. And so by binding to it and preventing those signals from going, it can increase blood flow throughout the body, and it can increase sex drive.
Yeah, I have a big benefit from yohimbine. And I've been in many like women's fitness groups, and they all say the same thing, that they want to hump the barbell.
Yeah, and that being said, the studies on this have been in men for treatment for erectile dysfunction. I don't think there's actually been any studies in women. The only reason I'm mentioning it is because of these anecdotes. And
it's pretty well known in the bodybuilding circle around women.
Yeah, and the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. So it seems like
it's a pretty safe try.
There's potential for a benefit, so why not give it a shot?
Just go slow.
Yeah, the dose would be 0.2 milligrams per kilogram of body weight, or usually about 10 to 15 milligrams for normal sized people. And lastly would just be anything really that increases blood flow. Because if you have an easier time letting blood flow throughout the body, then that means when you do become aroused, you're going to have an easier time getting blood to the areas that need it. In a men's case, that would be the penis so that they can get an erection. In a woman's case, that's going to be blood flow to the vagina and the clitoris. And those would be things like cocoa, polyphenols, dark chocolate has actually been tested for this, and eating 1 ounce to 2 ounces of dark chocolate has been shown to benefit sex drive. Other ones would be things like grapeseed extract, like picogenol, and grapeseed extract or pine bark extract, like picogenol.
What do you think of something like low-dose aspirin for this?
Well, yeah, like a baby aspirin in theory should help, because that's going to help keep your blood thin and moving through your body easier. So yeah, again, this is an area of research where, you're not going to have the strongest, most robust evidence. You're going to have a lot of holes and gaps in knowledge that remain to be filled, and there's not going to be, a lot of consistency just because people are so different.
Yeah, I think the next thing to cover is hormones. I know the person that asked this is very lean. That will impact your sex drive if you like it or not, because estrogen, testosterone all tanks when you're super, super lean, and there's nothing to do about that except do replacement therapy.
Yeah, or gain weight, but that's not always something.
I don't think she wants to. So, and so I would go into a doctor and get replacement therapy. You're at the age where you should be dialing your hormones in anyways. So.
Yeah.
But there's been studies on testosterone and estrogen patches that increase women's sex drive by like 50%.
Testosterone in particular. Testosterone is incredibly important for sex drive in both men and women. But the magnitude of effect in women is vastly higher than it is in a man. So for example, testosterone deficiencies in a man can, inhibit their ability to get an erection and reduce their sex drive. But once you kind of get into the normal range, increasing further, there isn't really, a huge benefit. In women, and also in men, the range is huge. Like, the normal range is somewhere from like 300 to 1,000 like nanograms. And in women, it's much lower, right? They're like working we're working in hundreds increments. They're working in like tens. And so just a little bit of extra testosterone will go a long way in them, because it's like they're incredibly grossly deficient. So getting that even a small increase is going to have a profound effect. And it's not that they're actually deficient, because they're women. They don't need as much as men. That's a fundamental sexual difference between men and women, right? That's a biological difference. But the way the body responds is going to be as if they're deficient. In the same way, men once in women, they're going to have hundreds of units of estrogen, depending on what part of their cycle they're in. In men, it's like once you start getting over 30 to 40, then you're increasing your risk of lowering your sex drive because of too much estrogen and growing man boobs, right? So we're much more sensitive to changes in estrogen because biologically we're male.
Yeah, I think estrogen needs to be emphasized here too, because I don't think that the person that asked this question is ovulating, because once you're that lean, you don't ovulate anymore. And so you're not getting those estrogen peaks in your cycle anymore either.
Yeah.
And so your sex drive is going to be pretty low if you don't have the psychological outlook that needs to be in place. And that is very complex. The quality of the relationship is a huge one.
Oh, okay. We're going to switch over to mindset now. Oh. Sorry. Abrupt transition.
Sorry.
No, the hormone stuff though, just to kind of summarize that section, it's very important. And it's not just any one hormone. In both men and women, both testosterone and estrogen play a role in sex drive to differing extents. So you want to make sure that you have those dialed in. Okay. All right. Psychology.
Yeah, the state of the relationship. Like,
Yep.
I'm sure everyone can relate here. When you are angry at your spouse or whoever you're seeing, your sex drive is non-existent as a woman. Like men too, but it's way worse for a woman. Like,
If you're like stressed or overwhelmed.
Yeah, if you have kids and you're stressed all day and then your husband comes home and just wants to have sex. Like, I've never had this issue, so it's really hard for me. I have a very high sex drive, naturally. And this is, I think a lot of it's mindset, because even when I'm lean, it doesn't go away. And I think that quality of relationship, like in my last marriage, like there was no sex in the last year because I wanted out really bad and I was done. But other than that, there was no like impact, and I was lean throughout the whole marriage. So
yeah.
Attitudes around sex from upbringing. If you were brought up in a heavily like Christian household, right, you're going to feel more shameful about sex, and this will infiltrate into your sex life with even your partner, because we have these subconscious thoughts about how it's shameful, it's dirty, like not too much, because we don't want too much shame and overwhelming shame.
Yeah, to add to this too, performance anxiety affects both men and women. And so, for example,
women in a different way, usually it's body image issues that
exactly
causes performance anxiety.
Yeah, well, I mean, that could apply to men too.
Yeah, I guess so.
This is, when we say performance anxiety, what we mean is that whatever it is, you're going to find some imperfection or multiple imperfections about yourself that you think that you're embarrassed about, basically. Yeah. And that alone is going to kill your sex drive, because you don't want to risk the embarrassment, even if there might not be any actual embarrassment, because the other person doesn't care, right? Or they think it's cute or whatever. Like, there might not be actual embarrassment, but in your mind, you're embarrassed.
Yeah, and women are really, really bad about this one too, because we're valued off of aesthetics primarily. I know people hate to hear that, but it's true. It's just an evolutionary drive. And so we put more value on imperfections than a man does. A man doesn't care. He just looks at it and he's like, eh.
Yeah.
Like, unless it's super bad, but.
Yeah, it really depends on the person, right? But the point is this is an area where, especially if you're married, talking about it can actually go a long, long way. Because if you have some imperfection about you or insecurity, if you bring it up to the other person and explain to them that this is fundamentally a reason why, like, for example, you've been avoiding sex lately, you would be surprised with how much compassion they have, particularly because they are probably going to want to get that need met. And so they're going to be extra like sensitive towards why you're not giving them that need. It's almost like a selfish motive, but
which is always how everything is.
But it'll play out and benefit you, because it'll help put your mind at ease. And frankly, if they aren't compassionate about your insecurity and they just poke at it or make fun of it or something, then I mean, it's kind of a red flag for you. And that's a good thing that you're now aware that that's what the person is like.
And that's how they're addressing an insecurity of yours. And I would just exit the relationship at that point. But another one is touch for women. Like, they need touch outside of sex. Mm-hmm. That's a huge one that men don't understand. Like, they're just like never touching the woman unless it's to get their needs met. And that turns a woman off right away.
Touching outside the relationship, or I mean, just being nice to them, really, you know, helping them out.
It builds up relationship capital, and the woman wants to invest herself into it too.
Yeah, especially like if you're someone who has kids, it's like, if you don't have to work that day and your wife has been watching the kids all week, go and take the kids to the park and, you know, give her some money so that she can go like get her nails done or something. And she will be very thankful for that.
And you will be rewarded.
Yeah, right.
Like, it goes both ways.
Seriously, because you're reducing her stress, you're showing her that you care. Like that's the type of mental stimulation that women need. it's not as, it's much more complicated than it is for men. Like
Yeah, men just need
men get touched in the moment and they're ready to go. You know, it doesn't matter what happened earlier in the day or later. Like they can just hyper focus on the thing. They're very simple creatures. We are simple creatures.
food, sex.
Yeah, food,
you're
sex,
covered.
sleep. We're good.
Yeah. The next one I would say is novelty. I think a lot of people that have been married for a very long time forget this aspect, and it becomes routine and boring. There's a bunch of ways you can find novelty. I mean, that's kind of a personal kind of thing, but if you want some answers there, I can go into detail in the comment section. I think it's past the realm of this because everyone has their own ideas of what's novel, right?
Yeah, but this is also another area where it's good to talk. I mean,
because if the other person like has crazy ideas of what they want, like this should have been talked about before you guys got married, but
yeah. But again, communication, common theme here is communication can go a long way in the relationship, because how is anyone supposed to know what your needs are if you're not telling anyone? People can't read minds.
Yeah, usually people don't tell their spouse or whoever they're dating about their sexual needs because they're ashamed of them.
Yeah. From
childhood conditioning or other spouses like in the past that have shamed you for your desires. There's nothing to be shamed about around your sexual desires. Like, there isn't. It's just that is a social construct. Like a lot of things aren't, but that is.
And and this gets into kind of a bigger overarching theme of emotional stability. You need to feel secure in yourself and in your relationship. And there's a lot of moving pieces for that, but fundamentally that's what's required. And this is, again, assuming you're in like a committed long-term relationship. If you are single, then your needs are going to be different because for example, if you're a single woman and you're just going out every weekend in order to hook up and get that sexual need met, you don't care about like the touch or any of this other stuff because in your mind, you're by yourself, right? So that's kind of the mindset you go into it with, where much like a man in a way, your need in that moment is just to have sex so that you can get that need met. And then all of your other needs you're taking care of. Well, yeah, it is.
Most men don't know what they're doing, so that's a bad.
Well, yeah.
Bad strategy for a woman.
Yeah, true. But the point remains is that the context of this video is if you're in a relationship.
Yep, and I think that also attachment styles play in. Like, I know the person that asked this is heavily like avoidant, and that's just how she's wired up. Avoidant types can either use people to meet their sexual needs, which is what a lot of avoidant men do. But if you're an avoidant woman, you just stop placing value on sex mentally.
Yeah.
And so you have to change your outlook on sex as not just meeting one need, right?
Yep. Yeah. So,
and that moving into a more secure like attachment style is going to help your sex drive too. Yeah. Because when we feel safe and secure, like you were saying.
Yep. Agreed. Is there anything else that we want to cover?
That's okay.
It. So yeah, this was our semi-long video on how to increase sex drive and libido.
Well, yeah, it's so complex. Like there's
women.
Even more I can talk about, but it's just.
Yeah. So this was a focus towards women. A lot of good info in here for men as well, though, because I mean, there's a lot of overlap with the two. But all that being said, we hope you enjoyed the content of this video. And if you know someone who you think this information would help, then please share the video with them. Give the video a like. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.